ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם שהכל נהיה בדברו. One of the most painful moments recorded in the Torah, a personally painful moment, personally painful for Moses, is when he implores God, please let me into the land that you promised the Jewish people. But God doesn't let him in, because actually God hadn't let in the Jews themselves into the promised land. Because after they sent some spies to see whether the land was really productive, whether the land was going to be able to sustain them, they came back with an evil report. They said that giants live there. We will never be able to overcome them. Well, with that attitude, God decided that our ancestors were not ready to enter the promised land, and all those that left Egypt, who were 20 or older, really died in the desert before the people went in under the leadership of Joshua, who was the successor of Moshe. Moshe wanted to lead the people into the promised land, but God said no. Why not? Well, one reason is that God at one moment told Moshe to take a piece of wood and speak to the stone so it should give forth water. Moses, instead of speaking to the stone, he hit the stone with the rod. So that God said, I told you something else. You were supposed to speak to the stone, and therefore sanctify me. Show maybe my power among the Jewish people. But you did something else. You didn't listen to me. Maybe what God wanted to tell Moshe was, you know, you don't accomplish things by hitting. You accomplish things by speaking. And it's a very important lesson. Many a time we're in a situation where we feel if we would be able to use force, we might be able to solve the situation, but that isn't so. Reasoning is usually the better attitude. And that is what the Torah is trying to tell us. So because Moshe disobeyed the word of God, he was not permitted to enter the land of Israel. Was that such a big error? Was that such a big sin? Maybe the Torah is trying to tell us something else also. A leader has to be an example. He has to be perfect, close to perfect. He cannot allow himself to disobey the word of God. Maybe one of us, if we disobey God, will forgive us. But in the case of a leader, God is much more stern, much more rigid when it comes to that. But in one of the last discourses of Moshe, he says the following: because you people sinned, this is why God didn't let me in to the land of Israel. This time Moshe, instead of saying because of my fault, he says it was the fault of the people, because you did something wrong. Namely, of course, a reference to the fact that you said that the land was not conquerable. That is why God did not let me in. Why was that so? What was the reasoning of Moshe behind that? Maybe what Moshe was doing was telling us something else. That when the people make a mistake, it is really the fault of the leader of that people as well. He didn't teach them well enough. He wasn't insistent, he wasn't convincing, so that the people should really feel that God was with them. And if the people deviated, really the fault is also of the leader of the people. And Moshe felt, the reason I am not going into the land of Israel is because you sinned. You made a mistake. But who is responsible for your sin? I am also responsible for what you did. There is a story in the Torah which says that if you find a deceased person, a body, in the field, and you don't know who killed that person, how that person died, so what you have to do is measure the distance to the different cities from that point on. And the elders of the city that is closest have to come to the place, offer a sacrifice, and say to God, our hands did not spill this blood. Well, who would have expected that the sages would be murderers? What you should do really is look for those that have records already, police records, and try to investigate one of them who is the one that did this horrible action. But maybe what the Torah is telling us is something else. That if there is a crime committed, the elders have to feel responsibility That means that their teachings were not effective enough in order for the people to have a different kind of behavior. So remember, each and every one of us is a leader. We're a leader in our small circle, in our home, among our friends. Make sure that you take full responsibility for what you do. Because when your friend does something wrong, part of the blame is really yours as well.